Hi everyone, this is Tanya from Flying Dog Studio. Thank you so much for joining me for part 2 of my Caran Neocolor II watercolor painting of these sweet little flowers. And if you didn't catch the first part, I'm going to link that down below. It's how I laid out all the base colors and got to the point that we are right now. So let's get started on this piece. Now last time when I left you, I had one little spot that I forgot to color in. So I'm going to come back with the same colors on top of this one, which is the Prussian blue and that umber. And I do have to the side that chart I'm going to keep handy, and then my size 8 Royal and Lang nickel brush. I am starting with turquoise on this, and I'm basically doing the same things that I did in part 1 of this video. I am looking for areas to fill in. I always like to do a light wash over things and then come back and add more color. As I always say, it's easier to add these colors and a little bit more difficult to take them away, especially if you're using something like Derwent's ink tints. So working with these, since this is the first time I've ever worked with this actual brand on paper, and this is a hot press watercolor paper, by the way, I didn't want to put too much on. I wanted to put just a little bit and then come back and add some more. So that's what you're seeing me do here. I'm picking up the Prussian blue, and again, working on the centers of these flowers. I left these off last time, and I'm going to add them on this time. And that's the process you're going to see here. I'm going to be quiet because I know I talk a lot here. I'm going to be quiet and let you watch me color, and I'll have those colors up on the screen. If I don't call them out to you verbally, I'll have them up on the screen. I have tried to slow them down so that you can take a look at what I am using. My palette is to the right there, and I'll come back on in a bit and tell you a few things that I'm doing. Now that I've finished with the Prussian blue, I'm picking up the umber and I'm coming back on top. And this is what I did in the first video in part 1. I do not keep black in my palette, as I said in that video. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I like to think like an impressionist artist. So I will use other colors to mix together in order to get shades of the colors that are in my palette. So the color I've chosen with this Caran d'Ache is the umber. I practiced it ahead of time to kind of get a feel for what it might do, and these two together make a wonderful dark blue. So that is the whole reason that umber is in my palette. Now that I've finished that up, I'm going to be picking up the orange, and once I knock all of the colors off, I'm going to pick up the orange, and I'm going to be working on the ends of the petals. There were a few petals that were dead on the end, and I wanted to keep those on. This is actually a close-up of a larger photograph, and I got that photograph from a website called Unsplash, and on Unsplash they have free to use photos on there, so I will have that listed below along with the photographer, and you can find that picture on there, and you may find something you want to work with even more than this piece. So on top of that orange, I'm coming back with ochre, and you'll notice that the colors I'm using now to get the dead parts on the end of these petals are the only times I'm going to be using these colors. So even though they are only used a little, they were very important because I wanted to keep this in the photograph. This was the part I really liked, this little pop of yellows and browns in the piece. And the one I'm working with just then was russet, and now I've picked up the brown, and that will complete the colors for working on these little areas in here, and you're going to see me come along with some carmine and some rose. The carmine is at the top of my palette next to the top, and that is the red color, and then the rose is on top, because there are some little areas of pinks and reds, and I wanted to get those in, and those were just perfect colors for that. So I'm going to be quiet and let you watch me work again now that I've explained all my colors and where you can find this piece, and I'll hop back on again in a minute. Now that those colors have been activated and that layer has completely dried, I am coming back with the malachite green, and I'm hitting a few areas that have just a little bit different shade of blue than everything else. So that's what we're going to be doing from this point forward. I have that nice layer of wash on the entire thing, and then I'm coming back with these specific colors in different areas, because each little petal is different. Just like people, each little petal is different, and I'm adding in the colors for every area where the colors are changing. So that's what you're seeing me do here, and I'm gonna be reusing some of the blues that I've already used. I don't believe that I have used this malachite green yet, but this is my most favorite color in the entire Caran set, so just wanted to throw that out there. So I'm gonna finish with my favorite color here, and then we're going to do an activation of colors on everything and keep going. Now that all of our colors are almost completely activated, we're going to let this dry completely, and I'm coming back with a little bit different technique. Now, you've seen me use this before. If you have watched my Derwent ink tints, one of my Derwent ink tints videos, I brought this out. This is a little cutting board. It was a free gift from our Walmart grocery pickup where we live, and it has absolutely no purpose for me in the kitchen, but the back part is lovely textured surface that you can use to color on top of and then activate those colors. And you can see the stains from where I use the ink tints. So I'm putting down some colors that I'm going to be using in some kind of tricky areas. It's the centers of those flowers. I could sharpen the crayons and come back in, but I can't get a sharp point like a pencil or like the tip of that brush. So I thought, I'm just going to put them over to the side and I'm going to mix my colors. And you can see the colors that I have already been using, the umber, and then I had the blue, the Prussian blue, and then the reds, and I'm putting all of those over there and mixing them together. I'm coming back with a little bit more of that carmine red, and just in case I need it. Some of the colors I put on there just in case I want them separately. So I'm going to be using those with the tip of my brush, using very little water on my brush, mainly all of the water. You can see I keep dabbing my brush on that towel. I'm keeping that towel right in my hand, but I'm using that in some areas that I want to get some specific colors in some tight areas, or I kind of want to, you saw the first stroke that I made there was under one of the petals on top of another petal, and that was to give me a nice line in that area. It allows me to kind of concentrate more color that I need for shadows and not have to rely on just coloring with the pigment straight from the crayon. So I can kind of narrow in on the areas and go into those areas like the center of the flower where it's a little bit more tedious. I'm going to actually put some more color on top of this once it's completely dry, and this is also going to allow me to get some of the little, I guess you call them veins in the petals coming through. And you might say, why are you not doing that last if that's a detail? I don't want it to be a really sharp detail. I want it to be there. I want it to be acknowledged that I see it and that it's there, but it doesn't need to be a sharp detail. I want it to be kind of a faint detail. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down now so that when I come back with color on top of it, it's going to knock back the sharpness and allow me to have subtle detail. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm putting some of the little veins in and some of the little spots and little dots on these petals, and then when I come back with other colors on top later, it's going to kind of knock those back. And with just a few more brush strokes, I will have finished activating the color on this final layer of our sweet little blue flowers. And if you would like to work on this with me, I do have my drawing of this up on my blog, so you're welcome to download that and trace it, or I do have a grid up there, have it under a grid, so you can draw it free-handed or with a grid, but I would love for you to join along. I appreciate you being here as always, and if you have any suggestions or comments, please put those down below, because I would love to know if any of you have worked with Caran d'Ache, and if you have any suggestions or if you have any special techniques that you use, please put those down below so that we can be a community that kind of learns together on this. Again, thank you so much for being here. I always appreciate your coming, and I will see you in the next one.